Check. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yeah, that's much better. One more time. Good afternoon. Yes, thank you. Welcome to Lunch with Books, and this is the return of the Wheeling Poetry Series. If you would turn off your cell phones, that would be kind of you. This Thursday at 7 p.m., People's University America 250 continues. We're covering the Revolutionary War, 1779 to 80 with Rob Garrison, and that will continue through August. On Saturday at noon in this room, a representative of the Grave Creek Mound and Museum will be here to talk about that facility. And up next week at Lunch with Books, and the following week as well, we're calling it Wheel Vegas Week because we have Frank Sinatra, a gentleman here who plays Sinatra tunes, and then Neil Diamond the following week. Yeah, it'll be very exciting, and it'll be party atmosphere and decorations and everything, and mocktails, so don't miss that. Mocktails. Non-alcoholic, Mom, sorry. Okay, so you all know the gentleman I'm about to introduce because he is our poet laureate. He's also our friend, and he'll introduce our guest today. He organizes these programs. Mark Harshman.
Thank you, Sean, very much. As always, I can't brag enough about the Ohio County Public Library. We are so incredibly fortunate to have such a marvelous library here at our disposal. Particular thanks to Sean and Julie for helping to make everything ready for today. So, I can hardly begin to tell you how pleased I am to welcome Zeina Azzam here to the Wheeling Poetry Series. We first met several years ago, just as we were emerging from the pandemic at a gathering of poets laureate from up and down the eastern seaboard. We immediately clicked when we fell into conversation, awaiting another reading, and have gone on talking ever since. Zeina is a Palestinian-American poet, writer, editor, and community activist. She is the Poet Laureate Emerita of the city of Alexandria, Virginia. Her full-length poetry collection, Some Things Never Leave You, was published by Tiger Bark Press in 2023. In the words of Louisa Agloria, the 20th Poet Laureate of Virginia, despite the wars that wage in the world and a multitude of things we can no longer claim, these poems find anchor in their belief in the goodness of family and the wisdom of ancestors. That is perfect. Poet Lena Khalaf-Tawafa, winner of the National Book Award for poetry in 2024, adds that through her childhood, memories in Arab cities, to the repeated farewells and departures of exile, Azzam's poems alternately mourn and celebrate the wonders of life. Poet James Cruz, who I've admired all my life, writes that whether reaching out to a mother in Baghdad wailing for her lost son, or relishing the spices of childhood, Azzam's necessary poetry roots itself in the earth that belongs not just to one country or one person, but to all of us. Zeina's chapbook, Beina Beina, In Between, was published in 2021 by the Poetry Box. The back cover statement by Grace Cavalieri, Maryland Poet Laureate, states how these poems create a world of beauty and patience, even when ideals are shattered. The themes that Zeina's poetry address include war and displacement, the refugee and immigrant experience, the elusive distance between home and exile, the feeling of being in between cultures and languages and identities and encounters with different kinds of loss. Zeina notes in her book that she has a bicultural and bilingual view of the world that is bewildering, enriching, and beautiful all at the same time. I'll add that her recent poem, Write My Name, about the horrors in Gaza, has not only gone viral, as they say these days, but is as powerful a poem of true witness as I have ever read. Myself, I find Zeina's to be one of those rare voices that is always trustworthy and honest, whether writing about the cross-cultural issues to which I've already referred, or to jazz. Looks totally different. Please, 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 a very warm welcome for Zeina Azzam. Now, you're not using it.
Can everybody hear me? Oh, good. I can hear myself, actually. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming to this Harshman, for curating this wonderful series, and for inviting me and to Sean Duffy and his staff and the Ohio County Public. Thank you again, Mark, for your generous introduction. I appreciate it so much. It has been such an honor to know you and to share poetry with you, and now to come into, your world here in Wheeling. Today I'll be reading some poems from my chapbook, which is and also from my full-length collection, which is Some Things Never Leave You. So before I start reading, I thought I would give you a little bit of a background, kind of my life in a nutshell, so you have a little bit of context for the poems I'm going to read. My parents are Palestinian refugees. They fled Palestine in 1948. During the first Arab-Israeli war, the one that dispossessed about 800,000 Palestinians who fled for their lives. And they were never able to go back. So they settled in Syria for many years, and I was born. And so that's where I had my childhood. And when I was 10, we immigrated to the United States, and as well as Syria and a lot of other Arab countries. We lived in upstate New York until of displacement, dislocation, memories, and identity, belonging, and of course culture. And my parents' refugee narrative was really overarching in my family and in my childhood and my growing up. So these are the stories I lived with and grew up with. So I write about my parents and their experiences, and so you'll hear some of these poems. Of course, I also write about a lot of other things. As Mark mentioned, I have poems about jazz, and I'll actually read one to you today. A poem called Just Like That. It's based on memories of my childhood in the Middle East. I think that many children in developing countries could write a poem like this one. And I think there are a few of you who know Arabic. I do sprinkle some Arabic words in my poems, and so this one has the expression inshallah. Inshallah means God willing, Allah is God in Arabic, and inshallah means hopefully, God willing, if God wills. Just like that, when our neighbor's son was gunned down in Beirut, when streets flooded like monsoon-like rains, after monsoon-like rains, my parents would only say, inshallah, things will get better. At the beach, when I was 8, a flurry of people rushed into the water, then returned, somber, carrying a young man's limp body on a raft. Once, as my mother's nimble fingers braided my long black locks, I watched a war unfold on TV. Some nights I fell asleep reciting my parents' words, inshallah, things will get better, often thinking that maybe I, too, could come face to face with a gun or a bomb from the sky, storms that could sweep away my home, or whirlpools as I swam in the sea. And just like that, my life would end, a little brown body washed ashore. So as I mentioned, when I was 10 years old, we immigrated to the US. I often think of that year when we moved here as a really huge watershed moment in my childhood. Looking back, and I think a lot of people who immigrate have these same feelings. I felt like I lost everything I knew, and I always think of my life, before we moved and after we moved. They're two different aspects of my life. Of course, I've been here most of my life now, so I feel very comfortable here. And this poem is titled, Leaving My Childhood Home. On our last day in Beirut, with my 10 years packed in a suitcase, my best friend asked for a keepsake. I found a little tin box to give her, emptied of lemon drops, that would hold memories of our childhood. Us swinging in the dusty schoolyard, rooftop hide and seek, wispy sweet jasmine, kilos of summertime figs, king of falafel's tahini-bathed sandwiches, our pastel autograph books. All those remembrances crammed in that box, tiny storytellers waiting to speak. Later, her family would uproot too, transplant like surly Palestinian weeds pulled every few years. We all knew about this, even the kids. I never saw her again, but know that she also learned to travel lightly, hauling empty boxes, pulsing with kilos of memories. I'll read one more immigration poem. This one is after we arrived in the United States. It's called Immigrant. I grew up eating cheese with bitter olives, sesame and thyme-infused olive oil on warm bread. Names in my family all meant something, like lifelong challenges. Samih, forgiving. Bahij, splendid. Fatih, victorious. Zeina, beautiful. In my childhood books, words flowed from right to left. Direction didn't matter then. At 10, we traveled east to west against time. I gained 7 hours of youth, lost my compass. In New York, no sea to swallow the sun each day. Foods were sweet in America. People spoke as fast as they walked. Everything was large, washing machines, supermarkets, even bananas and red grapes. We settled in this vast, cold place with neither boots nor a sense of how to be warm. Snowfalls were beautiful and cruel. The freezing air slapped our faces each morning. Inside, There was a smell of garlic and onions on the stove, loud talking over the phone with relatives overseas. My family inhaled and exhaled politics like cigarettes all the time. We blamed the British, the Americans, Arab leaders, Zionists, communists, or a history that was simply unkind. The TV in the background reported news in a language we spoke but did not really understand. All this over a good meal, always, as if the hunger was in our bellies and not in our hearts. Thank you very much. I have so many beautiful memories of my childhood in Beirut, and one of them came to me recently about an aunt whose house we used to visit. She was related to us by marriage. She was the wife of my mother's paternal uncle. So in Arabic, like in many other languages, we distinguish between maternal and paternal uncles and aunts, and often we call those people by that name rather than their actual name. So she was a strong woman who went through a lot, and I was very young when we left Beirut, so I never knew her from an adult perspective. So this is a poem about the experience of meeting her when I returned to Lebanon in my 20s. The word Mart Ammi means wife of my paternal uncle. And that's the title of the poem, Mart Ammi, wife of my paternal uncle. As a child, I had no idea of her name, just that my mother called her Mart Ammi. She was a kind and smiling figure, the Arabic welcoming words, ahlan wa sahlan, always on her lips. She filled our bellies like a bountiful rain nourishes a garden. At her table, we enjoyed deftly rolled grape leaves, the myriad ways she could envision cooking an eggplant, okra, cilantroed, and garlicked just so. She would hug me against her soft bosom as if I were the girl she never had after 4 sons. One summer when I was 9, I sneaked out of our apartment and walked the 2 Beirut city blocks to her place alone. She sat me down with a glass of lemonade, fragrant with rose water, grinning, then told me to get home quickly. My clandestine escapade became our secret. It was 14 years after we emigrated to the United States that I saw her again on a visit to Lebanon, when I finally learned her first name. But out of habit, I continued to call her Mart Ammi, the moniker that spelled how she fit into the patriarchal order of things. She insisted on accompanying me as I traveled to Syria by taxi, so I wouldn't cross the border alone. We spent hours together, the years between us evaporating like the cloud of steam over a soup pot. We dined on mezza and shish kebab, drank arak with relatives, stayed up late chatting. She got tired and admitted shyly that she was making threads of her speech. Our merry unraveling that evening is one of my fondest memories of Mart Ammi. Her signature curly, shiny hair, always tightly pulled away from her face, had started to slacken. During our time together, I saw a woman jolly and vulnerable, one who knew how to navigate around border officials, score a good bargain in the souk, opine about wars and inflation and refugees, narrate detailed stories about aunts and uncles long deceased. Our depth of kinship had crisscrossed geography and time and language, our family history of perpetual goodbyes. Thank you so much. As an immigrant to the U.S., I think I feel a lot of what other immigrants feel, which is I live in two cultures and two languages. And I think, of course, many refugees and immigrants feel this way. I used to feel that it was kind of a liability to have this, but as I grew up, I learned how really enriching it is to my life to have this experience, these two experiences. And so I continue to wonder, though, how one transmits one's culture to children, to the next generation, and to grandchildren. And I think about that a lot, especially now that I do have some grandchildren. And I wonder, how I've given my two children a good understanding of the culture that I grew up in, and what will my grandchildren know and appreciate about our family story and about our heritage. So here's a poem that explains these themes. This poem also has some Arabic, so you're going to learn a few Arabic words while you're here today with me. I feel like adding these Arabic words to my poems kind of makes them feel more authentic to me, like this is where I'm coming from. A language for colors. Asfar, she would say, pointing at a yellow tulip. And the color of grass? Akhdar. My young daughter had mastered not only the colors, but also the throaty KH, 2 letters in English that equal 1 in Arabic. I would tell her it's the same sound as in khamse, khubz, sabanich, 5, bread, spinach. And my favorite name, Khalid, immortal. I once confessed to a friend, wistfully, that I would not name my son Khalid because Americans couldn't pronounce it. Now I wonder about such wisdom. Even my 8-year-old could constrict her throat muscles the right way to say Khalid, immortal like an ancient olive tree, a flame that never abates, a mother's love. This spring, I saw a patch of double hybrid tulips, asfar tinged with akhdar, and thought of my daughter's satisfied grin at learning those words thousands of miles away from her grandparents' home in Palestine. Here we are, hybrid Americans, living between 2 languages and speaking in colors, splendid flowers in a distant field. I didn't get my phone. I don't know how much time Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Let's see. One day it struck me here how central the concept of khair is. Another KH word. Khair. You want to try and say it? Khair. It means goodness. And I realized that we use this word, khair, every day in every way in Arabic and when we greet people. So I just felt like it was so lovely that this amazing word, khair, is very much part of our everyday lives and our culture. Khair. From the time farmers rise with the sun until the night descends, there is talk of it. Songs and Quranic verses about khair, morning of khair, evening of khair. There is no getting around goodness. Tusbahi ala khair, my mother would wish me as she kissed my forehead at bedtime. May you wake up to goodness. Later I learned to respond, wa inti min ahlu, may you be part of its family, the family of khair. Even watching TV as we waited for bad news from Gaza, she would admonish, khair inshallah, goodness, God willing. No matter the misfortune, she was sure Allah would eventually bring khair to Palestine. Maybe it all started with her neighbors in Jaffa, the family whose name was Khair Allah, God's goodness. From kindness to comity, their ancestors packed so much in this name. It was a hedge against hardship, an incantation in their bones, Palestine's bones, where khair resides from morning till night, in a mother's kiss at bedtime, deep in a farmer's land. There, the roots of khair multiply in the earth, goodness bristling. Thank you. I mentioned grandchildren, and I wrote this one after my first one was born. It has an epigraph, a short epigraph. Epigraph is a little, you probably know, it's a little statement right before, a little quote usually right before the poem that gives you a little bit of context to the poem. And this one is by Rainer Maria Rilke, and he wrote, "Excess of being wells up in my heart. Newborn, thrust out of the womb's embrace, his first breath, a gulp of light. With tense open lips, a lungful cry, the shock of uncoiling from the sack's warm grip. Skin searches for skin, a primal past imprinted, a downy animal's cells seeking, tingling. I belong in your arms. I thrive in this closeness. The message will bloom, a luminous memory tucked patiently away between his temples. It will seep into deepest fascia, bones that received and emitted the original cry. Every move onward, a ripple in an ocean about being loved and loving." Thank you. Okay. Now I'd like to read a couple of poems about Gaza. It's been an especially difficult, almost 3 years now, 2.5 years for Palestinians. And of course it was difficult before October 7, 2023, but especially now with the genocide in Gaza, and especially for those living in Gaza and experiencing it. So as a Palestinian, I've alternated between feelings of intense grief and really enraged because this continues and continues. As you know, over 71,000 Palestinians have been killed, and including entire generations. And of those, about 20,000 plus are children. So this generation of children in Gaza will likely never recover from these horrors. And as a result of the thousands of children who are also injured, Gaza has the largest number of child amputees in the world. An acronym was coined by doctors in the early part of the war on Gaza. It's WCNSF, Wounded Child, No Surviving Family. There have been many, many instances of bombings where an entire family line is killed, and often there's only one child that survives. And this is the Wounded Child, No Surviving Family. So here's sort of a new poem titled WCNSF, Wounded Child, No Surviving Family. The last leaf on the branch wafts in air over decay on the ground below. It has witnessed another season of thundering storms, rubble and ash. Like the leaf, the child is brittle, brown, desiccated, tries to remember the trunk of the family tree. The flashback, like the dusty footprint for every kilometer walked, the fleeting relief of each new tent, an elusive meal. Does anything last besides the war? The end of the story is its beginning. Inside each memory there's a hardening, like teeth and bone, as if endurance can be measured that way. But like teeth and bone, a heart can break from an ache that digs as it ages. One day this child will question what survival means without family, without loving arms and faces, without the pillars of roots below, the canopy of safety above, a leaf always calculating the distance of the fall. When a friend asked me recently to write a hopeful poem about Gaza, I realized how much of a challenge I faced. It's hard to write hopeful poems about Gaza amid the ethnic cleansing and the genocide that had been unfolding there. But recently I came across a speech by the Palestinian pastor, Reverend Munzer Isaac, or Ishaq is his name in Arabic. He was the one that constructed the Christ in the Rubble scene at Christmas Lutheran Church in Bethlehem. I don't know how many, did any of you see that? And so in 2025, the following year, the church added a Christmas tree coming out of the rubble with the Christ child still in the rubble. And I read an article, an interview with him, with Reverend Munzer Ishaq, and he said he saw the tree as symbolizing defiance in the face of death. It's hope planted where despair is expected to rule. We live amid ruins, yet we insist on life. We bury our dead, yet we plant trees. Those are his words. So his moving words inspired me to write this poem. We plant trees in genocide. The earth knows us. We trust soil, sun, rain. On this same land, bombs land. We bury our dead. We bury our trees. Yet our children gather seeds. They ask us to imagine oranges and pears. Ours is the name for cactus fruit, sabr, patience. And fists will open, will plant. Our ancestors at peace in death, they are here in the ground, stones anchoring trees. They are the earthworms, minerals, oxygen, the roots, the love we know. In our homeland, we thirst for water and light. We dream of farming, even in hunger. Below, tears and breaths mingle, a helix in the soil. Hopeful tendrils curl toward the sun. Thank you. So this coming poem is about my late mother. Memories of her come to me often, and sometimes I capture them in the poem. So here is, my mother talks to the moon. The moon emerges, a sickle, wisp of an arc, the true beginning of a month. We believe this, and the eyes will swear to it, testify. My mother teaches me how to talk to the moon at this tender time, as we find this fingernail in sunlit sky traveling to early nightfall. هل هلالك ريتك علينا شهر مبارك. As your crescent appears, we appeal to you for a blessed month. She holds my small hands as we survey the sky over Beirut together, and I repeat her words, bobbing my head to their rhythm and savoring the rhyme of your crescent and blessed, hilalak and mubarak. To this day, I sense your presence, Mama, at the birth of each month. I remember your soft, lilting words. Say them out loud to the crescent moon. Think of beginnings rather than endings, even though you've been gone for many years. Thank you. This next poem is actually in the little booklet that you have, that you got today. It's about my father. It's called My Father's Hands. It's a really short poem. I'll go ahead and read it if you want to find it in the booklet. My father, before I read it, I'll tell you, my father finished high school, but because of his life's circumstances and the wars and the constant moving, he was never able to go to college, and it was something that he always wanted to do. And so in his late 70s, he started taking classes at actually there were correspondence classes, and he was given some credits for life experience, and he almost finished a BA. He also was an amazing gardener, so this poem is about both those things. My father's hands. They were not large, but thick, fleshy workers in the garden, nursing eggplants and fennel, okra and chard, digging and tilling and weeding, making the soil an obliging host. Maybe that's what made his fingers rough in spots, or maybe it was the constant leafing through books, a loving lick and a flip-flap of the page in search of nuggets that would be turned over and over in his mind. After he died, I found bookmarks between pages, carefully pointing, like tags next to seedlings in the earth. These are the plants I hoped for. These are the ideas that made me grow. Thank you. So I have 2 or 3 more poems. Which do I have? Should I go ahead and? Okay. I'll read all 3. I don't think this happened here, but do you remember when the Buddhist monks walked across the country a few months ago? And I live in Alexandria, Virginia, and they actually stopped by Alexandria, which was really cool. So I went to meet them and listen to the guy who spoke, the monk who spoke everywhere they went mostly. His name is Bhikkhu Panakara. And so I wrote this poem about what he said to us that day. They preached mindfulness, compassion, loving kindness, and peace. The Venerable Bhikkhu Panakara speaks. It has come to this, a stranger must tell me that peace will not come from the outside world, must remind me to create peace in my inner world, and to say each morning, today is going to be my peaceful day. And here I stand in frigid air with a few hundred listeners, taking in and repeating his words like a mantra that won't leave our minds. Today is going to be my peaceful day. An inside voice chides me. You are so impressionable, but I feel hungry for this stranger to give me a small way out of despair and sadness in this compassionless world, as a genocide rages in Gaza and worry and wars like ash from a volcano cover everything, even sunlight. He says to clean my mess immediately after making it, to focus on brushing my teeth when I brush my teeth, walking as I walk, eating when I eat, on my in and out breath, on the life force metronome, my heartbeat, that undergirds the words, today is going to be my peaceful day. It has come to this, a stranger in an orange robe must intervene to remind me that happiness and peace are temporary, like the wind, he says. I wonder, have I strayed so much from my breath beat and heartbeat? How did I neglect to keep looking inward to to strive for inner peace. Today is going to be my peaceful day, I repeat, and resolve to be kind to myself, to love this stranger's messages as if they are blossoms on my path in springtime, reminders of loveliness that beckon forth peacefulness. I must remember to notice them and see them, even as we live with war and suffering around us, and to welcome them in each morning. When I served as Poet Laureate of the city of Alexandria, Virginia, I was asked to write a special poem each year for the city's jazz festival. So we have it in June every year. So jazz is actually my favorite genre of music. So it was a pleasure to participate in this way. So this poem is about Duke Ellington. As I did research on him, as you know, he's a pianist, jazz pianist, composer, and orchestra leader. I found out that he had this thing called synesthesia, which is a fascinating ability to cross borders between human senses. So for Ellington, he would actually see a color whenever he would hear a note, which is so interesting. Or if there were a few notes together, he would see several colors together. And so he associated the two. Anyway, I loved learning this about him, and this is kind of what pushed me to write this poem. Duke Ellington's synesthesia. You heard notes as colors, ears and eyes coupled like thunder and lightning, a bird's song together with its vibrant plumage. The band was your artist's palette. You painted sounds and found harmonies in an azure mood, singing about your solitude. When DC erupted with white on black attacks in the red summer of 1919, did you turn to the ivories for solace? Did your fingers touch and see the bluest of blues? Were you starting to understand the hues in black history, from black to brown to beige? Were these bold words you wrote decades later beginning to tint your mind? Lord, dear Lord of love, God Almighty, God up above, please look down and see my people through. A colorful school of the arts and a bridge in Washington, D.C. were named after you. But it was 25 years after you died that they gave you the Pulitzer Prize, setting aside the satin doll and the A train to Harlem, your indigo mood, and all those things that don't mean a thing if they ain't got that swing. I imagine you somewhere in the stars with Billy Strayhorn and Johnny Hodges, Mahalia Jackson and Ella Fitzgerald, making music like old times. You composing in the violet rays of the galaxy, hearing the shimmering caravans of comets, and fashioning their iridescence into vivid ballads, syncopated light. Thank you. I'll just read one more poem. This is also kind of a newer one. I bought a new car 2 years ago. This is about my car salesman. He continued to be friendly with me even after I finished buying the car. Whenever I go get my car serviced, I stop by and say hello. Anyway, we shared stories as immigrants. He's Ethiopian and I'm Palestinian. And we talked about how education and the arts were important to us. My car salesman says he loves me. He's actually much younger. He's happily married. This is really I had signed the car sale papers a month before and returned to change the temporary plates. We stood chatting in the parking lot in the sun. He told me I reminded him of his late mother, complimented my pretty sandals, which echoed her taste, and silver hair. She never dyed hers, he said. He noted the old school calendar with pencil that I whipped out of my purse was just like the one she used. His wife and 3 daughters would like me so much, he offered, would look up to me. And his mother, an immigrant from Ethiopia, was well educated, spoke French. I told him I would have loved to meet her. You're young enough to be my son, I added warmly. And I thought, how we crave connection, look for our loved ones in others. How even in a car dealership parking lot, we can find kinship with a stranger. And as I thanked him and was about to leave, he opened his arms like a tall tree bearing its trunk. I arced my arms gently around him and smiled when he said, "Love you." In that instant, I knew that's how he finished each phone call with his wife and girls, the way he had said goodbye at the end of conversations with his mother. How lovely that she raised a son not afraid to easily declare that he loves. Thank you very much. I appreciate you're such an engaged and attentive audience. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Other questions for Zeina?
If-
We'll bring around the microphone to you. So raise your hand.
Well, first, thank you for your wonderful poetry. Much appreciated. My wife and I lived in Wheeling for about 50 years. We're Palestinians.
Yes.
And we believe in omens, in good omens. Your being here certainly was a great omen. Let me tell you why and how it relates to your poetry.
Okay.
Today, I'm sorry, get it closer? Yes, please. It'll be too loud. I'll tell you about how good an omen it was. I founded a group called Physicians for Palestine. We delivered the first delivery of artificial limbs to Gaza last week. And as you started speaking, I got the email that the first fitting for these prosthetics in Gaza was done today.
Wow, that's wonderful.
So we have people, amputees, who are working with artificial limbs we delivered. They were made in San Diego, by the way. And they're working on them. That's the first delivery of artificial limbs of any value in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's why you're a good woman. So, then you work for that. Hoping to have much more of these in the near future. Thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Anybody else have a question? Raise your hand. I'll come to you with the mic.
Thank you for your poems. I enjoyed them very much. I was wondering if you would tell us a little bit about what you have grown to like the most about America and your experience here.
It's a good question. I mean, it is not necessarily that I find things here that I don't find there. I just in general, I love the community that I live in, the connections with neighbors and friends, and the interest in, helping those who are the vulnerable communities, the interest in helping those who don't have as much as we do. I think that's a lot of what is wonderful about American society. People say that in the United States, there's more of an emphasis on the individual, whereas in the Arab world, it's more about the community and, the family, and I think both are great. And I love the emphasis on the individual and working on ourselves and getting better. But at the same time, I also love being part of a loving family and a neighborhood and a community. So I think you can find both in both places. The emphasis on education in the United States, the emphasis on the arts, But again, I find that overseas as well, in Arab culture. So it's hard for me to say what are things that are different. But those are the kinds of values that I look for in the place that I live. Yeah.
You can probably hear it in my voice, but, Zeina, we've talked about this before, but can you tell us a little bit about the We Are Not Numbers
Yes.
program, please, that you were involved in?
Sure. So there's a program that I've been volunteering with for the last 10 years, and it's called We Are Not Numbers, and you can actually find it online, wearenotnumbers.org. Write all those words. And it's a program of working with young adults from Gaza in writing in English. And so we pair a young adult writing an essay or a poem with somebody here in the United States or somebody in Europe who serves as their mentor. So they work together, usually through email, but depending on what's the easiest platform for people from Gaza, because some of them don't have internet easily. They use WhatsApp, they use different things. But the idea is that the mentor works with the mentee to edit and refine and get this essay or the poem to a publishable state. And so on our website, we publish these essays and these poems. It's a way to bring stories from Gaza that we don't hear, from young people. These are mostly around college age, early 20s. And, they have a lot of stories. They have a lot to say. And so that's the important thing, is to help them have a platform to get their stories out. And We Are Not Numbers, the name is because often when we hear about Palestinians, and especially about Gaza, we just hear, this many were killed, and this many were injured, and this many are homeless, and this many were displaced. And we don't really hear what their names are, what their lives were like, what their experiences are like, what their stories are. So that's the whole idea behind We Are Not Numbers. And for me, I don't have family in Gaza. I never did. My family is from other parts of Palestine. And so it's been such a pleasure and an honor for me to get to know young people from Gaza through this mentoring program. And now we started getting people, encouraging people to write more poetry. And so 3 years ago, I said, we should have some guidelines for our poetry, like what we should do, and, like encourage them to use metaphors and to, use strong verbs and, put away your poem in a drawer and come back to it in 2 days and think, look at it with fresh eyes and all this stuff. So I asked all the poetry mentors to give me ideas on what to put on the sheet. And so I put together this long sheet, and so that's what we give them now whenever they want to write a poem. And then, with volunteer organizations, when you suggest something and you do it, and then, so they asked me to be the poetry editor for the organization now. So, and it's just wonderful. So a poet works with a mentor, and then when they finish the poem, they send it to me, so I get kind of the last look over of the poem, and then we put it on the website. So I encourage you actually to go to the website. It's free. It's a public-facing website.
Do you have to qualify in any way to become a volunteer?
Well, you can. I think we have a lot of volunteers now, so we don't need any. But you have to be an editor or a writer yourself, or certainly a poet if you're going to be mentoring poets. But it's not too intense, Yeah.
Any other? Okay.
How do you plan on spreading the stories more throughout the area besides just the website?
Of the We Are Not Numbers people, you mean? Yeah, that's a good question. And many of them have gone on to become journalists with sort of, I wouldn't say mainstream organizations, publications, but they've been well trained so they can write as journalists do, which is really, we're so proud of them. And so they're writing more as they've grown up and sort of grown out of this we are not numbers system. And a few of them also are being published by a not a sister organization, but another organization in DC that is asking for poetry and, well, mostly essays from Gaza. And so they're having a whole new platform doing that. And then we also encourage them to publish, especially their poetry in other places. So slowly but surely, we are getting the words out in addition to the website. And every few months we have a new cohort of about 30 to 40 young people who want to join the organization and want to be trained. And so we train them with all sorts of workshops and everything. Of course, logistically it's hard. Some of them can't get on the internet, or they can't go, there's a small office and they can't get to the office. So for a while we suspended the program altogether because we couldn't get to them. Gaza is not an easy place to communicate with. But we started a new cohort just this past week, and so we're hoping to get back on a little bit back on track.
Could you say something about your early career and what led you to begin writing poetry?
Oh, thank you for that question. Thank you for all the questions. Well, I have always written poetry. I remember when we came to this country, well, first of all, in the Arab world, poetry is prized. I mean, learning poetry, hearing poetry, reading it, you start from when you're very, very young. So it was always kind of there with my education in the early part. But then we came here to the States, and I remember as a teenager going to the library and finding the poetry aisle, and just spending a couple of hours. I would sit on the floor and I would just get a book and read it, and I tried to write. I still have my journals from that time. And I took a few courses here and there, but I went to college and I pursued, psychology and music and all sorts of different things. So poetry was always part of my life, but I didn't make it a priority till about maybe 20 years ago. I started taking a lot of classes. I'm in a poetry group that meets every month, and lots of workshops. I did not do an MFA. It was poetry, it was sort of organic the way I did it. I read on my own, I wrote on my own, but also got a lot of feedback. I think it's really important to get feedback, and it's really important to read a lot of poems, to become a good poet, I think. Most of my career I spent in Middle East work. I worked at Georgetown University, the Center for Contemporary Arab Studies, for 27 years. So working in, Arab studies was really figural in my professional career. And a lot of that time I spent helping raise awareness about the Arab world and about Islam to American communities and American schools. So I did a lot of workshops for K through 12 teachers about the Arab world, about, Arab culture, heritage, history, and politics, and the arts. And I always tried to do something with poetry. But anyway, so about 20 years ago, I started making it much more of a part of my life, and I went back to school and did a master's in Arabic literature, actually, and I focused on Arabic poetry. And just, it's just been a beautiful course since then.
Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for coming.